Shape of breast seems to be a very important factor in men's judgment of it. Good afternoon, friends. In this video, we're going to finally find out, do men prefer larger breasted women? And if so, why might they? But before we do, please subscribe to the channel if you're not already, like the video and comment on the video to help the channel's growth. Now let's get started. First of all, we have to point out the uniqueness of breasts in humans. In other animals, including primates, breasts only enlarge during periods of lactation, when mothers are feeding their children. Humans are the only species that experience breast enlargement that is semi-permanent, that lasts throughout life and differs among men and women. Because of the uniqueness of human breasts, academics have long been arguing about how these breasts evolved. In particular, they've offered natural selection-based approaches and sexual selection-based approaches. The natural selection approaches generally theorize that humans evolved to have more subcutaneous fat, and particularly breast tissue, in order to regulate their heat and also potentially as an energy resource for their young during scarcity. On the other hand, sexual selection, which means humans' choice of their mates according to breast size, may have created the unusual breasts of humans. Intersexually, meaning between genders, how this may have happened is within women, breast size is associated with estrogen level, and estrogen level is in turn associated with fertility, such that breast size is indirectly associated with fertility. So breast size can be considered a positive indicator and an honest signal to men of a woman's fertility level. This has been called the potential fertility hypothesis. On the other hand, there's a nubility hypothesis, which theorizes that the shape of women's breasts attracts men, such that when women's breasts get less firm as they age, the breasts attract men less, being an indicator of less reproductive value, such that the breast firmness is an indicator of residual reproductive value, meaning how much a woman is still able to produce children. And even breast symmetry appears to play a role in signaling to men. In particular, asymmetrical breasts are a sign of less fertility, a sign of increased risk of breast cancers, and also indicate worse immune function in women. And it seems clear that women also recognize the signals from other women's breasts. In particular, women seem to regard women with larger breasts as more attractive, more fertile, and more likely of them to be befriended by those women, more likely to be interesting for those women to become friends with. However, these large-breasted women are also less likely to be introduced to the woman's mate and regarded as more threatening in general. So women also see this signal from breast size. Before we leave the subject of how breasts evolved, I want to comment on a 2021 paper. Check out this paper if you're interested in a holistic theory of how breasts evolved in people. I think that it's the most accurate. It posits that breasts evolved through people's need for more subcutaneous fat, and in turn, the more subcutaneous fat increased people's estradiol levels. That's a kind of estrogen, a female hormone. When those estradiol levels increased, they caused the breast tissue in particular to enlarge. And then sexual selection caused the remaining increase in breast tissue. So what do men find more attractive among women's breasts? Well, first of all, researchers consistently showing that the symmetry of breasts is important in men's judgment of the breast attractiveness. Next, let's talk about shape. As I mentioned earlier, women's breasts shape changes over time and differs between women. Academics call this breast firmness, in the sense that firmness declines over time in a woman's life, and particularly may decline after they have a child or they lactate. And the breast firmness indicates its basically upright position. Whereas when the breasts sag over time, which by the way is called ptosis, that indicates a reversal of the firmness. As we'll see in a short while, shape of breast seems to be a very important factor in men's judgment of its attractiveness. Also, we should mention changes relating to pregnancy. It seems that men that are sexually attracted to pregnant women and women that are lactating tend to be men who had younger siblings and were more exposed to lactating pregnant women in childhood. But what's known about men's preferences for breast size? Well, what we would expect from evolutionary theory is that men should be more attracted to women with larger breasts in general. However, surprisingly, some studies indicate that men may prefer medium breasts or even smaller breasts, although most studies show that men really dislike unusually small breasts. Also, it seems that men's preferences for breast size stay the same over time, according to some longitudinal studies. And finally, there is some evidence that men in poorer socioeconomic circumstances may prefer women with larger breasts. This may be due to the scarcity of resources and larger breasts being associated with a larger body mass index, such that, for example, in countries like Malaysia, poorer men may be more likely to want to marry an obese woman who is less difficult to take care of, essentially. However, larger breasts are actually more preferred in women with more feminine waist to hip ratios, which indicate that larger breasts may be more preferred when they're not on obese women. And finally, this takes us to the fascinating 2017 paper that we wanted to discuss today. This paper analyzed participants' preferences for breast size among varying cultures. Particularly, they analyzed Namibian people, Cameroonian people, Czech people, and Brazilian people. What they found was there was a lot of within culture variation in preferences. So preferences were very varied between people. So what we're talking about here are just averages that vary a lot between people. They found that out of the 4 countries studied, only Cameroonians preferred large breasts to medium-sized breasts. Interestingly, this may reflect the worse economic circumstances in Cameroon. However, within the Cameroonians, when they were stratified for economic welfare, it wasn't found that better economic welfare was associated with less preference for larger breasts. It was actually the reverse. So it doesn't completely make sense. Interestingly, self-perceived attractiveness was the biggest correlate or associated factor with preferring larger breasts across these 4 countries, such that men who find themselves more attractive were much more likely to prefer larger breasts in women. And finally, this 2017 paper found that preferences for firmness were very robust and consistent among cultures. Cameroon was the least likely country to prefer firmness of breasts, and the academics theorize that's likely because Cameroonian women have more children and therefore have less firm breasts as they age than maybe other women. In fact, this interest in firmness was further explored in a 2019 study. In this study, it was found that preferences for firmness of breasts were higher than preferences for size of breasts. And generally in that study, medium to large size breasts were preferred, but firmness was the most desirable feature. So let's review what we learned today. First of all, breasts are unusually large in humans. Humans are the only animals that have breasts that grow during puberty and stay that way throughout their lifetimes. Second, these unusual breasts have likely evolved due to a mixture of natural selection and sexual selection. And now breast size, symmetry, and firmness are all indicators, honest indicators, of a woman's fertility. And to the surprise of academics, men usually prefer medium breasts to larger breasts and care more about a breast's firmness than its size in general. And finally, our experiences with breasts early in life determine how we are attracted to breasts later in life. Anyway, friends, I hope you found this interesting. I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning.